So Joe Biden and Barack Obama had a recent discussion, a sit-down, a physically distancing sit-down, discussing many issues, including healthcare. So let me play this clip, and I'm going to talk about the issues with their position on healthcare.
I remember when Bo was toward the end, and the only person I told the detail all the time was you, because you had a right to know exactly what. And he only had months left to go, and I used to sit there watch him in the bed, and in pain, and dying of glioblastoma. And I thought to myself, what would happen if his insurance company was able to come in, which they could have done before past Obamacare, and said, you've outrun your insurance, you've outlived it. Suffer the last 5 months of your life in peace. You're on your own. All the things that it did, that it was so profound an impact on people, it was like it took them a while until they started to take it away to realize what was happening.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, you and I both know what it's like to have somebody you love get really sick. And in some cases to lose somebody, but that loss is compounded when you see the stress on their faces because they're worried that they're being a burden on their families. They're worried about whether the insurance is going to cover the treatments that they need. I couldn't be prouder of what we got done. 20 million people have health insurance that didn't have it because of what we did.
All right. It is amazing that they're able to appear to have empathy and not understand how many people right now are losing their health care in America because they had it tied to their employer. And that the cost of coronavirus treatment, just that treatment, let's forget, cancer, everything else going on in the world, just coronavirus treatment, it can cost people up to $70,000 if you're uninsured. Don't they understand the problem with the Affordable Care Act, with Obamacare? But of course they do. Of course they do. But the issue, when you look into it, and I've discussed this in other videos, Biden's campaign is heavily funded by Big Pharma, by the for-profit health industry. Now look, obviously, just so it's obvious, Trump is obviously worse. Trump wants to repeal Obamacare. He has no proposed replacement for it, which would eliminate coverage for pre-existing conditions and would throw millions and millions off healthcare. So they would have nothing. Obviously, Trump is a lot worse. Obviously, his position, his policy or lack thereof is much worse. But that doesn't give Joe Biden a pass. Medicare for all, as a Canadian who lives with a single-payer system, there is no argument against Medicare for all. You would have healthcare guaranteed to you regardless of your employment. So let me show you what it looks like right now in the U.S. This is, in 18 weeks, 53 million workers filed for unemployment. So keep in mind, this is just who filed for unemployment. Many are already unemployed or haven't filed. But here, 53 million workers, a massive chunk of those workers, massive chunk, also had their health care tied to their employer and no longer have that health care. Oh, but they can pay into it with COBRA. Oh, great. They can pay into it with COBRA. With what money? And even if in Biden's plan you protect that, how about the people that are uninsured? What do? They didn't have a job. They have no health care. What do? The only reason Biden doesn't back Medicare for all is because of his big donors. You look at polling when it comes to Medicare for all, not just Democrats. Democrat support is like 90%. You look at overall voters. A majority of voters overall. Look at a recent Kaiser Family Foundation poll. There's more polls you can look at that show the exact same result. a majority of voters overall support a government-run healthcare system. And that is even with all the misinformation out there about Medicare for all and single payer. Because people understand that the status quo is not working. It's not working, and they have experience with it not working. 67% of bankruptcy filers cite illness and medical bills as contributors to financial ruin. 67% of people that go bankrupt, it's at least partially due to medical bills. That doesn't exist in these universal systems. Nobody goes bankrupt over medical bills in Canada. It doesn't exist. Yet here, most people that go bankrupt, medical bills is part of the problem. How can you defend this system? Or this from Harvard. And by the way, there's an update to this study. I couldn't find it, but I believe it's about 60,000 people instead of 45,000. But Harvard Gazette study from 2009, new study finds 45,000 deaths annually linked to lack of health coverage. 45,000 people a year die due to a lack of access to healthcare. Again, that doesn't exist in Canada. And by the way, this is before, obviously, 2009, before the pandemic. So who knows what the hell it is now? But this is during normal times. 45,000 people a year die over lack of access to healthcare. How can these two possibly defend this system? There's no defending of it. And in fact, you saw Barack Obama come out, I believe 2 years ago now, during a speech he gave, of course, once he has no power, during a speech, talk about how we have good new ideas like Medicare for all. He called Medicare for all a good new idea. A good new idea. Medicare for all. Yet he's not pushing Joe Biden to back it. When you see people in positions of power that you know better, this is why I get animated over Democrats, because they know better. When it comes to Republicans, we know their game. We know it's all about the donors at all times. It's all about amassing wealth. They don't care. It's all about capitalism. They don't care at all about people ever. We know that already. Democrats should be fighting for you, and they don't. You have Bernie Sanders, who's an independent. You can see why. Bernie Sanders fighting for Medicare for all. AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, several Congress people. But in terms of people with actual power, Obama had power, didn't push for it. Joe Biden has power right now as a nominee, will have power if he wins, is against Medicare for all. In fact, Biden said he would veto Medicare for all if it came to his desk. That shows you where his interests are. So for somebody who's supposed to have empathy, to still not understand, or not even understand, to not care enough to actually fight to help people. This is why, if Biden wins, the fight has to start immediately. The movements have to start immediately, and they have to be focused fights. Not these big protests that don't really mean anything. No, a focused fight for specific policy issues. A specific fight for Medicare for all. Biden has to see his approval numbers drop immediately. You have to make him act. You have to make the administration fear movements, fear the people. Because you know what Biden's going to bring in is not going to be enough. It's just not. His strengthening the Affordable Care Act, even a public option, it's nowhere near what people need. In fact, a public option, there's a lot of speculation that it could actually be worse because it would give private insurance companies a way to offset all the sick people onto the public system, then drain the public system of resources, so then those private insurance companies can turn around and go, hey, look at that. The public system not working out. Yeah, because you put all the sick people onto the public system. So there's a lot of fear that could happen under a public option. The fight has to be Medicare for all. It has to be single payer healthcare. And it has to start from the beginning.